Hello guys and gals, Insomnia from UnrealTek.net, a division of BlenderTek.com here. Welcome to the first video on how to create an entire multiplayer game using Steam and blueprints only, as I was researching this for the upcoming September Epic Games Game Jam. So we will start off by enabling Steam, the online Steam subsystem module, then creating the logic to host, find, and join servers. Then we will create widgets for a main menu, server list, Steam name and ping HUD, and we may go further to do things such as chat. So remember our motto, create your way, and let's get started. The first thing we're going to want to do is create a new project. You can of course do this on a existing project. I'm going to go on a new project so it's fresh. So I'm gonna choose a first-person project, and I'm gonna give it a title called multiplayer underscore example, or multiplayer Steam, we'll say. We'll create that project and then we'll get started. So after your project has loaded, we actually need to close it first, and then you will want to navigate to your project directory. Now we need to open the config folder, and then we need to open the default engine.ini file. You need to open your project at least once for these files to be generated, so that's why you can do it on existing projects. So default engine.ini, go ahead and open it for editing in Notepad or Notepad++ as I suggest. And then you'll want to scroll down all the way to the very bottom and hit enter a few times, and we're going to add a few lines of not code but just some settings in here. So what we'll start off with is opening and closing square brackets, and in here type a /script/engine.game engine. Case is very important in all these instances, as well as white space and stuff like that can be important. So our first line will be plus net driver definition, whoops, if I could type, plus net driver definitions equals, and then open and close bracket, def name equals game net driver, and that should be in brackets, so game net driver in open and close brackets, and then a comma and no space, and then driver class name equals, and open and close brackets, online subsystem Steam, and sub should be capitalized, online subsystem Steam dot Steam net driver, and then another comma, and we're going to go driver class name fallback, everything's capitalized there, equals open close brackets, online a subsystem, not Steam, I'm just going to tab that for quickness, online subsystem utils dot IP net driver. Alright, and then hit enter 2 times, and we'll want to do open and close brackets again, and we want online subsystem, and then the first one and the only one in this instance is default platform service equals Steam. So this is how it knows to use the Steam setup that's built into the engine. Whoops, just Steam. Then we need open and close brackets again. Now we need to set up some defaults for our Steam's online subsystem. So online subsystem Steam, and the first one is be enabled, so that's a boolean, is it enabled, equals true, so you can turn that to false if you want to turn it off. Now a very important one, Steam dev app ID equals 480. Now 480 is equal to Space Wars, and that's what Steam lets you use to test with. If you get greenlit and you're on Steam eventually, then you will get your own app ID that you can put in there, and then you'll have an actual app ID. But this allows you to use the full Steam service for testing with 480. And then we want BVAC, so that's their cheating prevention enabled equals 0. We're not using that, so that's useless to us. Then we want to open and close brackets, square brackets again. We want slash online subsystem steam dot steam net driver, and then in there the only one will be net connection class name equals online subsystem steam dot steam net connection. And then an optional one, if you want, you can do in open and close square brackets URL in caps. You could do something like game name equals MP Steam. Alright, and I believe that has to be set to the name of your project. So save that, hit Control S, or file save obviously. Make sure it's not read only. And then close that. Now you can open your project again, and we can test to make sure that Steam is enabled. So make sure that you have Steam running, and once you're sure that it's running, how you can test if that worked is by hitting the arrow beside play and then going to standalone game. And this is how you will test all multiplayer functions, is in standalone game. So open standalone game, and if it works, you should see the little Steam pop up in the corner where it says Shift Tab to open the Steam overlay or whatever. So we don't see that in the corner. Oh no, okay, there it is. So now I can hit Shift Tab and I have access to the Steam community. And you can see I'm in Space War. So that is how you enable that. So now let's work on actually setting up the ability to join servers and such. So I'm gonna go to my content folder. I'm gonna create a new folder. I'm gonna call it multiplayer, and in that folder I'm going to make a new folder called maps and a new folder called blueprints. In the maps folder, I'm going to right click and create a new level. I'm going to call it MP underscore main menu. I'm going to save that, hitting Control S. And in blueprints, I'm going to right click and make a new blueprint class and go under all classes and type in game instance. Now a game instance class allows you to set things. I'm just going to call this GI for game instance MP underscore Steam. What a game instance allows you to do is set things that will exist from start to end of the game. So after you've created this game instance, one very important thing you need to do is go to Edit on the main toolbar, Project Settings, then go to Maps and Modes, and where it says Game Instance at the bottom, change it from the default Game Instance to Game Instance whatever you named it. And that way you'll be able to use that. So we want to open that game instance. That's where we're going to be doing most of our networking stuff. Now, if you have a game instance already set up, or you think you're going to be using it in the future, what I like to do is make a new graph right here under above event graph. I like to make a new graph, and I like to call it multiplayer. Then it's just like event graph, but it's called multiplayer. Just cleans things. So what we need to do next is go back to the content browser, and in the blueprints folder, let's right click and go to blueprints, and let's create an enumeration or an enum, and let's just call it game state, or yeah, game state, and open that up, and let's create 6 states counting from 0 to 5, and these states will help us move between states and help us move between playing, my menu, errors, etc. So we want the first one to be start up, so that's when we first start the game. Then we want main menu, we want playing. We want error dialog. We want server list. And then you want one for custom stuff, so something like Mish or unknown or something. So save that by hitting the save button, and then you can close out of that. And now in your game instance, you want to create a new variable, and we'll call it current state. So this is the current state the game is in, and if you want, you can even add a tooltip called the current state the game is in, and change the variable type to what you just created. So I called it game state. That should actually be capital E underscore. That's how enums are named by standard. So back there under variable type, we're going to change it to E underscore game state. So we have our enum there, so select that, and we can compile, and we can set the default state to unknown or startup. It doesn't really matter. So what we want to do, let's we need a few macros because we want to change states. So let's start with a quick one. So create a new macro and call it is current state. And so this just checks if we're currently in whatever current state is set to. So if you select the input node, we need a few inputs and outputs. So hit new input and choose execution and type execute. And then in the outputs, do two of them. You want one is true and one is false. So either yes, we are in the current state, or no, we aren't and we need a transition. Then create another one in the input and change its type to the state that we just created. So that's E underscore game state in my case. And I'm going to call that in state. So the state in. And you can give this a description like checks if we are in the state that current state is set to right now. So we're just going to move this output pin over a few bars, and we're going to hold down B and left mouse click to create a branch and wire it up to the input. And its condition is going to be if you drag off of in state, type equals and you want equal enum. So you see we have startup, and you can put the boolean to the boolean, so to the condition, red to red, and then you want to drag current state onto this pin here. So make B equal current state, and that will create this little setup. And so that's our condition. Is in state equal to current state? If it is, yes, true, then we output true. If it's not, false, then we output false. So pretty simple. So we can select that and comment it and set compare input state in to variable current state. Perfect. So we'll just save that. Whoops, we'll just save that. And we can close that. We need another macro, which is going to be transition for transitioning, sorry. So we'll call it state transition. And this one's going to be a lot more complicated, so I'm going to drag the output above the input. So select the input, and we'll start off. We need one that's the game state, so call that one desired state under input. And then create a new one and change it to execution and call it execute, so that it blanks it out, and then hit the arrow beside it and just move it up with the up arrow just to make it nice and clean. Then we need two outputs again of execution type, and the first one will be same state, and the second one will be new state. So what we need to do is drag in our isCurrentState macro into our graph and connect the execution pins up, and also connect desired state to inState. So this will check is our current state equal to whatever we're inputting, because we don't want to change it to the same one. And off of desired state, I'm also going to drag off just to somewhere and type in add reroute node. Now you'll see a lot of times what I do is I simply drag off and then I hit a key and it automatically does it for me. So that's all I'm doing when that happens. So I'll just say that I'm adding a reroute node, and that's what I'm doing, just add reroute node. Alrighty, so this start here, we just check if new state is the same as current state. And if it is, under true, then we want to go way over and do a print string and drag in your current state while holding down control to do a getter. And then off of that, drag off and type text. We want to do a toText byte because an enum is technically a byte. And then we want to do format text, so right click and type in format text. And under format text, type error, trying to leave current state. And then in curly brackets, type in cur state. Now, cur state, that'll appear. Just connect that up to that text node. If it doesn't appear, you can right click and refresh nodes. I'm going to move this over so we have more room to work. And then you want to take the result and just convert it to a string. So just drag it over to the print string. And we want that to show up in red since it's an error. So just edit the color and the opacity. So pure red here. And the duration I'm going to change to about 5 seconds. So there. I'm going to double click on the execution string to make it a bit cleaner. I'm going to bring it up here and make it so that this is straight up and down. That's a preference of mine. So that's right there. So I'm going to bring these over so it's nice and clean. Perfect. All right. So what this does is prints error message if the new state is the same as current state. And then what happens, we can drag our output node all the way over now. After that prints that string, then it outputs same state. So we know it's the same state, and we printed an error string. So we're just catching errors, and we'll do quite a bit of that because you want to catch network errors. Now, under false, what you want to do is drag in current state again with control held down to do a getter, and drag off of that pin and type in switch. So we're going to switch on state and expand the arrows and connect the execution to the false. And so when we do the transition, depending on which one we're transitioning to, we're going to do different things. So we want to take this reroute that we did and bring it over so it's nice and clean. I'm going to create another reroute node to bring it just up to here so that we can use it. And there's nothing we can really do right now. So the only thing we can do right now is set current state. So drag in current state while holding down Alt, and that'll set current state. And what we want to set current state to, so take the green pin and connect it up to our reroute node there. And then that way that'll be ready for us. We need to create some widgets to get that set up. So After we set current state though, we go to new state. So we can connect that up. And in the meantime, well, we can set stuff up ahead of time. So let's create a new variable. Let's call it main menu, and just for now, temporarily, just create it of the type widget, and it'll be we could just use just widget and a widget reference. So main menu. We'll do another one called server list. We'll do another one called loading. And another one for error dialog. And just while we're doing variables, we need one more variable of type boolean called b enable LAN. So is LAN enabled or not? And we'll use that when we host our game. So make sure you compile and make sure enable LAN is set to false by default, and you also want that to be editable or public so that it turns the eye either yellow or green if you've added a tooltip. So next up, we need to create a function which we're going to use in this macro right now called hide widget. It's very quick and easy, so just create a new function called hide widget, whoops, capital hide widget, and it takes in an input, and that input is a widget reference just like we created. So widget reference, and just call it widget in. I'm just gonna go widge just to keep it nice and clean, and no output. And so all we do is drag off the widge and type in remove from parent. So I'll just take it off the screen. So you can even say takes widget off the screen. Compile and save. Now we can go back to our state transition. And so what we want to do, on startup, we don't do anything. We just go straight to current state. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to double click on the wire to create a reroute node. And I'm going to make it so it's nice and clean and bring it over here. We'll probably need to do a little bit of rearranging. I'm going to make as much space here as I can. All right, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've forgotten one state, so we need to go back to game state and add in new, and you want loading screen because we're going to have a loading screen in between maps. So loading screen. You can put a space if you want, so that's an enum. So save that. There it is. All right, awesome. So main menu, well, we're just going to call the hide widget function over and over. So just drag the hide widget function in. And I like to line it up with the pin. So the main menu, I'm going to line it up with hide widget, and then I'm going to set it, or then I'm going to connect the output to set game instance, and I'm going to clean up the pins. I'm going to make it so it's visible, but so that it all comes together nice and clean. I like to keep them lined up. Yeah, we're definitely going to need more room. But anyways, hide widget again. This one will be for not for playing. That'll do something else. This one will be for error dialog. And so this one goes, whoops, to current. Well, they all go to current state. That one doesn't really need much of a reroute. And again, so just copy paste, I guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all of these way over so we have lots of room. So hide widget, and they will get smaller once we plug in a widget. So let's actually do that now. So the main menu, what widget we're going to be hiding is actually the main menu widget. So take main menu and drag it on top of widge. And then let's drag it up here so that it's clean. And error dialog. that one will hide ear dialog. So drag that one on top of Widge. And next we're doing server list, so connect that up to the execution pin. And its widget will be server list. And we can clean this up a little bit more now that we got more room. Keep it compact if possible. And then loading screen. So that's going to be another hide widget, and it's going to hide the loading widget. So bring this one down here, plug that one into loading screen, and then plug the output of that and the other one into current state. And I'm going to reroute these again just so that they're clean. Perfect. Alrighty, and unknown would be for something miscellaneous, and playing we'll get to in 1 second. So let's just compile and save so that we don't lose anything. And so we need to create the function for playing, which is where we destroy the session caller, the person who's created the session, the game session. So that means that that we need to create a custom event. So let's go to our multiplayer tab or the event graph, whatever you decide on. Right click, type in custom event. We want to add a custom event called destroy sesh caller. Sesh for session. And off of that, all you need to do is just drag and type in destroy session. It's under online. And then the player controller, obviously you need to get player controller. So that way you know which player controller is destroying the session. And I'm going to line this up so that it's nice and clean. Just like so. Perfect. And we're going to comment that and say destroy the session. Easy enough. And you can see that destroy session is a latent node because it has a little mark there. And you could add on success string or an on failure thing, but we'll get there later if we need. So now what we can do is from playing, we want to call destroy sesh caller, just like that. So we could do that. Just bring it down here to keep it clean, and then it goes to set current state. So the current state would be playing or something. We'll bring this loading up so that it's cleaner. Bring that up there so it's not crossing the wire. Whatever, it's good enough. Could bring that down one if we wanted. In fact, we can even delete that and just connect those straight together. Alright, so it should look like that. I can move that back over a bit, and we can move these back over a little bit. Something like that. Cool. Alright, so we can take these and we can comment and say hide certain widgets and set game state for full transition, depending on what state is desired. Alright, cool. So now we'll go back into our multiplayer graph and we will create the rest of the things that we need to work with this. So we have to destroy the session. So we obviously need to create a session. So let's do that one. So let's do a custom event. Let's call it host game event. And so this one, what it will do is, well, it's going to call another function first. So we need to call a quick or we need to create another event. So just go above it and we'll just create a temporary custom event. Well, not temporary, we'll use it, but it'll be called show load screen. So what we want to do for the host game event, we want to call that. So just drag off and type in, drag in and type off show load screen. And then we want to create session, again under online. And so public connections is how many people can join. Just start with 2 to make it easy. And use LAN, you wanna drag your enabled LAN onto that so that we can enable or disable local area network or Steam at will. And player controller, that needs to be connected to a get player controller, obviously. So we'll stick that in there. Make this clean if we can. Good enough. All right, and then on success, we will obviously open a level, because once you host a game, you'll want to open a level. So we'll call this level, we'll just go multiplayer level 1. And you want to open the arrow and you want absolute yes, but under options you want to type in listen. Because what listen means is you're listening for people that are trying to join the session on that map. So you could create a lobby that way too if you wanted, but we'll just be using a single level. So you can close that arrow again if you want, as long as it's got listen on there. So host game event, and we'll be doing a failure one too. I guess we might as well do that now, but we'll comment this and we'll just say host a game session. Will be called from main menu widget button. So on failure, we want to do display an error. So let's create a new macro. That's a bug that likes to happen sometimes. And this macro is called display error. And so I'm going to take the output and drag it up again and hit the input so that we can add some inputs and outputs. So under input, we want a execution. Let's call this one called error found. Let's go error found. And the second one is error message. And that will be of type string and no output. So under error found, we want to first transition to state, and the state of course will be error dialog. So remember what that does in there, what we designed. And then it won't be the same state since we checked for that, so it'll be a new state, and off of new state we want to call destroy session caller. So we want to make sure that session is destroyed because it failed. And then drag in error dialog with control held down to get a getter. And then we want to do an is valid and use the question mark 1, not the peer function 1. And do the execution to the execute there. And so if it's not valid, then we need to create that widget. So we need to go and create that widget quickly. So what we're going to do is let's under multiplayer, let's create a new folder called widgets, and let's create a new widget. So right click and go to user interface, widget blueprint, and we'll go w underscore error for dialog. So that's what I use, w underscore for all my widgets. And so what this will consist of is we'll delete the canvas panel and we'll instead put a overlay into there. So just like that. And then in the overlay we'll put a border. And in the border we will put a vertical box. There you are. And in the vertical box we'll put text. And then we'll put a spacer under primitive. So spacer, drag it into the vertical box, not onto the text, into the vertical box. And then we will add a button under common into the vertical box, and on the button we'll add text. And this button is going to be our OK button, so you can rename that if you want, because it will be a variable. So we need to just set this up as all now. So the overlay, we want to set the visibility to visible, and the border, we want to set that to centered and centered horizontally and vertically. The padding, we want lots of padding, like say half at 32 is like 16 pixels. And then we want to set the vertical alignment to center. And the brush color, we can change that to like a gray. So let's just half everything. So 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. So kind of like a, so that you'll be able to see things behind it. And then the vertical box, that's set up just fine, so just like that. And then the text we're gonna bind, but we can clear the text for now. And we want it auto, and we want it centered. Alrighty, and then the spacer, we want that to have a Y value, so a height of 100 pixels or 128 to keep it nice in powers of 2. And lastly, the OK button, that one we want a horizontally aligned center. And then the last text block will just be a simple OK for text. And we can set that color and opacity to black if we want to make it easier to see, and we could add, say, like a light gray / white shadow and change the opacity to 1. A little bit of shadow you could change 3 to 3 so you can actually see it, something like that, 2 and 2, whatever you want. And you could make it a little bit bigger if you wanted, like 28, something like that, whatever floats your boat. So back to the text. So select the text, the first one in the vertical box. So we want to hit the bind button and then hit create binding. And so the binding we're going to make basically just displays the message that we send to it. So it's just going to be get message. So we're simply going to create a new variable called message of type string. And then we're going to drag that in, holding down control for a getter, and then we're just going to plug it into the text node to convert it, to cast it, just like that. And one last thing we want to do, we want to create another function called setMessage, which will, if you select it under the inputs, we want message in, or because of the I, in message of type string, and then we want to set message. So hold down Alt while dragging in message to do a setter, and then just connect up the pins. Pretty much as easy as that. Next, we just need to go to the event graph, and we need the button. So go to the designer, select the OK button. Then at the bottom, there's the on clicked, hit the plus sign. So on clicked OK button, we cast to your game instance. So in this case, it's GI MP Steam, and it needs an object to cast into it from. So we want to drag off that backwards and do get game instance, just like if you were getting a player controller. And then we need to create one more event back in our game instance. So let's go back to our graph. Let's create another custom event. So custom event called show main menu event. And then we'll go here and drag off of as your game instance and type that custom event in, show main menu event, just like that. So you can compile and save, and that will error out. Compile your game instance first, then that will compile. Compile, save, then you can close that out. That one's done. So now we can go back to our game instance and go to the display error that we were doing. So now what we can do, if it's not valid, so if basically what is valid does, it checks, is this error dialog here? And since we have created that dialog now we want to change its variable type. So make sure you have error dialog selected and change its variable type to widget error, and then you want a reference and hit yes, change variable type. So like I said, what it does is it basically checks, is that widget, the widget error dialog, is it there or is it not? So if it's not there, we need to create it. So let's drag off of is not valid and type create widget and select error dial, and the well, it's just fine on its own actually. And then we want to take the return value and set the error dialog. So hold down Alt while dragging error dialog and connect up the pins. That way we have a reference to it. Then we want to, if it is valid, if it is already there, actually what we want to do is drag off of the error dialog pin here and do set message. Remember that function we just created? So just like that, if it is valid, it goes in there, but it also gets executed if it's not valid, just like that. And the message in is going to be the message that we brought in, so the error message. And if we want, we can double click on the lines to create some nice execution wires, or some nice wire look, sorry. Line it up there so it looks even better. Good enough. Alright, so next we want to drag off error dialog and type add to viewport, so that will actually show the message now that we've set what message it will show. And then lastly, we want to drag off it one more time and type set input mode UI only. And so the widget to focus is the error dialog. This is just connected in the execution string. And the target, you need a player controller, so just type in get player controller. Just like that. And that is done. That's our macro. So now we can close that. I'm just going to compile and save for good measure. Hide widget is done. Oh right, we were using it for, let's make sure this is fine too, error dialog. Yeah, it's still there, so we can close state transition. So it was under on failure. So what we want to do is on failure, drag off of there and type in display error. And the error message is going to be something like error could not create session. Try again, or whatever you prefer. And so we can use that macro over and over to display errors whenever we want. So that is that. We might as well do the show main menu one, since that's pretty important and it's called quite often, since you need a main menu pretty much all the time. So what we want to do is we want to do an is current state check, and we want to check, are we playing? So select playing. So if we are playing, so that would be true. Basically, well, if our state is playing, then we want to open level. So yeah, if we are playing, if we're already in the game, then we want to open the main menu up. So open main menu. And no listen or anything on it. However, if we're not playing, that means we're somewhere else. So that means we need to transition to the main menu state. So transition to main menu, and either way we're going to end up in the main menu state. And again, we won't have the same state because we check for that. It'll always be new. And then we're going to do another is valid because we're working with another widget. So this one is going to be main menu, just like that. And we're going to need to create it again, so we're going to have to go and create that main menu widget. So go back to our widgets. Let's create another widget called widget main menu and open that sucker up. And so this one's pretty quick and easy. It's not too complicated. So all we need to do is add a border and a vertical box. And then we just need a layer of buttons. So we just want a button followed by a spacer in the vertical box. And then I'm just gonna select those two and copy them, and then I'm gonna paste it in there. One, well, that didn't work out like I wanted. One, I want spacer below the button, like that. So I want 4 buttons, so I'm going to copy that, paste that, get rid of the spacer and put it down lower at the bottom. Actually, we don't need 1, we only need 3. So that's like that. So we can rename these. So we want play button. We want find games button, or server list, I guess. Quit button. And toggle LAN button. And then you want to add text on top of each of those. I guess I forgot that. Text, 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 text. I accidentally added one inside of the vertical box, just like that. So now we can set it up so that our border, we want it to be vertically aligned center, and let's see what else. We want to set its anchor to the very center, and then we want to set position X around 0 and 0 for now, just to kind of center it up. And size X, we want like 512. So maybe 256. Size Y, we want something like 800. And then we want to change the alignment to 0.5 to center it. And then the vertical box, that's always fine on its own. The play button, it should be fine. All we really need to do now is, I forgot the border. The border should be set to under appearance. The brush color is changed the opacity down to 0. And we want all of these spacers to be set to 32 pixels and 8 in the X. text. So set all of those. 832, the last one. 832, and then we just need to set the text. So I'm not going to bother setting them black this time, but first one will obviously be play game. And then we want server list or find games or whatever. Next one we want quit. And then the last one, we can leave that one blank for now actually. But we need to bind it because it's going to toggle. So this one will just be LAN/Steam. So let's bind, create binding, and let's call this this function toggle LAN text. And so what we do in here, I'm just going to disconnect this and move it up. As usual, well, an easy way to do this actually is first type in get game instance. Then drag off of it and cast to, and it'll be right there. So we cast to our game instance, and then off of the pin we do our get be enable LAN, and then we do a branch off that and use that as our condition, and we create a local variable called button text of type string, and then we want to set that, so hold down Alt and drag it in twice for true and false. Actually, we're in 4.9. Can we add return nodes? Yes, we can. Because we're in 4.9, we can actually do this an easier way. We can just go if true and if false. So true, the return value will be LAN mode enabled, and false will be LAN disabled, and in brackets Steam enabled. Or we could just go Steam enabled and compile and save that. Alrighty. So that is that. Then we need to create the bindings for the buttons. So the play game button, make sure you hit the little plus button. So when we click the play button, again we want to get game instance, drag off of it, cast to our game instance, and then we want to do our host game event. Easy peasy. So then we should just be able to type server list, server find games. We'll just go server list button on clicked. So when the find games button is clicked, we do the same thing. So let's copy and paste that, except we drag off and we show we haven't created that one yet, so we'll do that here in a minute. Quit, that one's pretty easy. When we click quit, it's as easy as just dragging, whoop, we'll put you up here, dragging off and quit game, just like that. And then lastly, the last one, LAN/Steam. When that one's clicked, we do this one. We do the cast. This one we can do right now, immediately. So what we do is we drag off, and we do we get our get B enable LAN, and then we set it. So we got to drag off again and set B enable LAN, because remember, that way we set it when we host, when we call the host game event, remember. And then we want to do a not boolean. So if we're not in LAN, so basically it'll be the opposite of whatever the button says. If it says LAN is enable, then it will not be that, it will be Steam, basically. So I don't need to comment those, they're pretty standard. But the find games button, we need to do the other one. So let's create a new custom event in our game instance called show server list event, and you compile and then go back to your widget main menu and just call that from the find games button. So show server list event. So now we can compile and save that, and I think that's pretty much everything. We do want to create one variable in here for future use when we do the server list. So we'll just call it sessions found, and it's going to be of the type blueprint session result, and we want it to be an array. So just hit the square button there. So we can compile and save that, and then we can close it. That one's done too. So if we go back to our game instance, we were working on the show main menu event. So if it's not valid, then we create a widget of type main menu, and then we take the return value and we set it to the main menu. So hold down Alt. Now remember, we just created that, so take the main menu variable and set it to the one we created, widget main menu, make sure it's the reference type, change the variable type, then we can connect this up. And just like before, we want to drag off of here and set input mode UI only. And the widget to focus is itself, and the target is get player controller. And since we're using the main menu, that actually needs to be plugged into owning player, so that you know which player controller is hosting or finding events. And if it is valid, if it's already there, we set the mode, and then we add the viewport. So just drag off. I'm just going to reroute and quickly add to viewport, and then just connect it up. Easy peasy. Alright, so that is show or create main menu. Alright, what next? We got load screen and show server list. So I guess we might as well do the show server list. So show server list. So on that one, we do another one, the state transition. So we're going to transition to the server list. And again, we check for same state, so the new state, and then we do is valid. And this time we're checking for the server list. So we're going to need to create that. So go ahead and create a new widget. Widget server list. Something like that. Something that's memorable, I guess. This is a little bit more complicated, but it's not too bad. So we're going to want to add a vertical box. And then we're going to want to add text, and then a spacer. All of this into the vertical box. And then we're going to want to add a horizontal box into the vertical box. And in that horizontal box, we're going to want to add text followed by spacer, followed by text, followed by spacer, followed by text again. And then we want to add a vertical box to the other vertical box, so it's nested. And in there we want to add text followed by a scroll box, and that will show the list of servers. Next we want to add another horizontal box into the vertical box. Whoops, I added an overlay. Horizontal box into the vertical box, and in that horizontal box we want a button with text on it, and then a spacer in the horizontal box, and then another button with text on it. So I'm just going to copy this one. And then another spacer followed by a button with text on it. So I'm just going to copy this one. Get rid of this weird text block it created. Spacer. Yep, perfect. Okay, so now we can start setting this up. So our vertical box is going to have its anchors set to all four corners like that, so that, or sorry, no, to the center, so that it can be centered on the player's screen. And size Y, so its height is going to be 800, since that's the minimum resolution of anybody's screen, and it's going to be 1024 wide. And then we want to align it to 0.5, 0.5, and the pivot 0, 0. Okay, why are you being all weird? Oh, position X and Y 0, 0. Alright, we can leave the pivot back to where we can revert that. Alright, next up, the first text is going to be our title. So we can even rename that if we want, title. And so we'll call this the servers. And that should be fine all on its own. Next up, the spacer is going to be fairly tall. We'll make that 32 pixels tall. And then the next one we have is the horizontal box, which we can call the title bar. And that should be good on its own. But we need to set all this text up and the spacers. So the first one will be the server name. So we can call this oh, we can just leave it, but we will whatever, we'll call it name text, and the text will be name. That should be fine. And then the spacers are going to be quite wide. This one will go about 512. We'll see what kind of room we have. And then the next one is going to be how many players. So player count. And we can set that to say players. And then the next spacer going to be around 128 wide on the X. And then the last text block there is ping, and it can say ping. So you probably add a little bit to the spacers if we wanted. Oh well, we could even add some spacers to the edge, whatever. Should work. So next up we have a container. That's what a scroll box works as, is a container for other widgets. So first of all, we want to set this vertical box to fill, and set it to 1, and we'll just call this the results, or this, yeah, the search results container. Just like that, and then text right below it, that is the status of the server. So that one we can blank out because we need to bind it. So I'm gonna uncheck that so I remember that. And then the scroll box. So this is the server list scroll. And it also should be set to fill 1. And I believe that'll work. Then the next horizontal box we want to set to fill to 1 as well. However, we want to set vertically aligned bottom. And then the buttons are pretty simple again. We have the first one will be, where are you? Oh, I'm on the button. I want the text. Refresh. Might as well call the button what it is. Refresh button. And then the next one is going to be for testing, debug destroy sesh, and its text is going to be debug destroy session. That's just for testing, so you can set that to like 16 if you want. Whatever, we can leave it. And then the last button will be back. So back to main menu, and we'll set its text to back to menu, just back. And then the spacers, we'll go in descending order. We need to set this spacer to fill 1.0, and actually if we do that to all of them, it should do, or the both of them, yeah, that looks perfectly fine to me. Alright, I think we have everything. It's just the status that we need to just create that one binding for. So this will give us the name, the players, and the ping. So let's create a binding, and that binding is going to be called, well, it basically got it for us, get status message text. So we want to create a variable called status text of type string, and control drag that in and plug it right in. Done deal. And we need a few more functions in here. We need get refresh button enabled. And so in there, we need to create another new variable called be refresh button enabled, and that'll be of type Boolean. And so we just drag that in as a getter, and we need to output a Boolean just called enabled or return or whatever. And so it can just go like that. And we need one last one called get status message visibility, and it needs an output visibility of type E_slate visibility. Alright, so we need another variable called status text visibility, and that will be of that type we just created. So that was E_slate visibility. Compile. We want to set its default to collapsed, however, and then drag it and connect it there. So by default, you won't see the status text. Whoops, close that toolbar. Actually, I need that toolbar. I just want to hide that. There we go. All right, so we also need a macro called refresh server list. And in this macro, it's quite complicated. So I'm going to put the output above. So we need an input of type execution. It's type execute, and an output of type execution called then. And this is going to drag on, so just get ready. So we set the refresh button enabled, so hold down Alt. So we set it to false. Then we set the status text to say searching. And since we're now searching, we want to set the visibility. So set status text visibility to visible. And then we want to come off there and do a for each loop. Actually, you can just type in F, or hold down F, sorry, and left mouse click. And the array is going to be found session widgets, which is going to be a new widget that we need. So let's just call this found sessions, found servers, we'll call it widgets, and that will be an array of type widget reference, but we need to create that. So let's just compile and save. Let's go back, let's create a new user interface widget called widget underscore server row. So open that up. This one will be a pretty quick one to create. All it is a size box with a button and a canvas panel with some text. So delete the canvas panel, replace it with a size box, and the size box is important because then we can set the sizes that we want. So let's enable everything. We want a width override of the size of our server list, 1024, a height override of that spacer we use, so that's 32, and the minimum width we want nothing smaller, we want nothing taller, and the max we want nothing bigger, we want nothing taller. So just like that. And then we need a button, and then on top of that button we want a canvas panel, and that needs to be set to horizontally align fill, so it fills up the whole button. And then we have 3 text blocks. 1, 2, 3. 3. Come on. 3. Oh, you bugger. So the first one is server name. That's the second one. Second one is just a dash, a hyphen. First one is server name. And the last one is the player count, so 0 out of 2 or 8 or 4 or whatever. And we need to set their positions. So the first one, server name, 00652 by 30. Looks pretty good. The next one, size X will be 82 by 30, and its position will be I think about 900. You can do some fine tuning later. And the last one, 0 to 2, will be somewhere around 512 with a size of 107. I got pretty close with 100 there. Perfect. Alright, cool. And these need some binding. So the server name bind, create binding. And that binding will be none other than get server name. And so what we want to do is create a new variable called search result of the type that we had used in the main menu, blueprint session result. So drag that in with as a getter, and then we want to drag off there and get server name. You can see there's quite a few options. If you just type in get, you can get ping, max players, current players, and server name, and just return that value as the text. And then we want to go to the dash, and it is going to be our ping actually. So we'll bind, create binding. We'll set that to get ping. And so the same deal, we can just copy it basically right from the get server name, just copy search result. I guess you could just drag it into whatever's faster for you. Get ping in milliseconds. And then we just want to, whoa, I forgot that you can do that now. You can just drag it right on and it'll add the pin. But no, we want to do that. And those settings, we want, yeah, that'll work like that. Perfect. Lastly, we want 0 to 2. So that'll be obviously our current players out of our maximum players. So let's bind that, create binding to get player counts text. And so similarly, all we need to do here, because we're going to set it, is we need to create a new variable called player counts of type string, and drag it in and just return it. Now in we need to go to our button. So select your button and do on clicked. So this will be when we click on a server. What we do is we get game instance. As you can see, most everything's handled in the game instance because it stays there for the entirety of the game. Then we cast to it, and then we do our join server. But I don't think we set that up yet. Join, no. So we'll just bring in your search result as a getter, and we will set that up now. Kind of getting 3 things in a row going. So back to our game instance. Let's create a new custom event called join from server list event. However, that custom event needs an input. A lot of people don't know you can add inputs to custom events, but you can. And that will be search result of type blueprint session result. Compile that, head back over to your server row. Now we can go off here and do a join from server and just plug search result into search result. Easy peasy. Alright, so compile and save that. So now that's 2 things out of 3 done. Go back to our server list. Now our array is going to be an array of those essentially. So we drag that in and refresh. The found server is found servers widgets. First of all, we need to change the variable type to widget server row reference, not server list. Widgets. Oh, come on, Unreal. Widget server row reference. There we go. Drag it in as a getter and plug the array into the for each loop. So we want to cycle through each found server if there's more than one. So we want to take the array elements. So we want to take that server row reference and we want to do a remove child. And if we turn off context sensitive, remove child just like that, because we need a target. And that target, I'm going to put in the execution first, is going to be our, where are you? Ooh, I didn't enable it. We need to go back to the designer, go server list scroll, and click is variable. So now you'll see it shows up, server list scroll, drag it on top of the target, just like that. So basically, we're removing that server from the list. And once it's completed, then we do a clear, array clear of found sessions or found servers widget right there, like so. However, once we're completed, that's not all. We clear it, but we need to do stuff. So we need to get game instance. We need to cast, turn on context sensitive again. So we need to cast to it. And then we need to check if LAN is enabled, so get B enable LAN. And then we need to do a get owning player node. So that'll check which player owns the server list, sorry, instead of a session or whatever. And so we need to find the sessions, find sessions of the person owning that server list that we found. So that's the player controller, not the world context object. I don't know why that got there. Let's try this again. Find sessions. There we go. So the player controller is get owning player. Then B use LAN, depends on our B enable LAN. And max results, we can probably fit about 18. Maybe not, maybe about 15. You can play with that though, obviously. So, that hooks up to the end of our cast. And then we set a found servers, and that is a array, same deal, of blueprint session result. So drag that in as a setter. And so on success, we set found servers to the found sessions. On failure, we set status text to search failed. And if the search failed, then we set refresh button enabled to true. So then we can refresh and try again. And then we output. So it's kind of like a return almost. So we can try again now. So after we set the found servers, then we go into a branch, hold down B and left mouse click. The condition being the results, the length, so how many results did we find, how many servers, how many sessions, if it's equal to 0, if it's equal to 0, that's our condition. If true, then we set status text. Set status text to say no servers found. And then the same deal, we allow the refresh to happen. So I'm trying to keep this so that everything can kind of line up. Alright, no sessions found. However, false, if there's more than one, then we set status text visibility to collapsed. So then we set the whole searching whatever to basically invisible. It's completely gone. And then we do one more for each loop of the array of the results that we got. So plug that right into there. I'm going to reroute that so it doesn't bug out. And so what we do in this for each loop is, again, we get owning player because we need to know who owns that server. And off of there, we create a widget. So it has an owning player of type server row. So that's the loop body. And off of the return value, we add an array add to the array found sessions widget, found servers widget, session server interchangeable. So we add to that. So we create a widget and then we add it there. So basically, you know, server 0 is equal to widget 0. And then we take this, rewrote it here, and we set search result, except we didn't create that function. So let's open that back up. I thought I did. No, I totally forgot to. Okay, so open up widget server row and type in get search result as a new function. And it does have an input of type session, of type blueprint session result. So we set search result, hold down Alt, to that, and then we also set player counts. This is how we get the number of players. So this is where it gets a little bit funky if you haven't dealt with building strings before. So off of the session we get current players, then we also get max players, and off of the return value we want to build a string out of an integer like so on each of them. So I'm going to do that. So we have our in integer current max. So you want current is out of, so like so, and really that's it. So basically what it'll do is it will append to nothing, it'll prefix nothing, so it'll start with an integer, so it'll be like 0 or 1, and then it'll add an out of, and then this one will just be a number. So we take the return value as our append to. However, it starts with this string that we built and ends with the number. You could also do this by dragging off here and do append if you wanted to do something funky like you know, you could say plug that in, found that many players out of, you know, and then plug in the other one, and then you could type in like max players if you want to do something like that. So it is a little bit adjustable in that way. So that is our function. So we can save that. Technically it's here, but whatever. So we'll go back. Now we can go back and it'll be there. So set search result. Oh, come on. I compiled it, didn't I? Compile, save. I called it server row get search result. Oh, did I type in search get or set, sorry, get search result. There we go. So its target is that widget execution, and the session is way back at array element. So I'm gonna reroute that, and then I'm gonna double click to reroute it again. Alright, so after that we do one last quick little thing. We add child. Context sensitive off. So that we don't do this right, let's instead get our server list, scroll list, hold down control, add child, and type on or turn on context sensitive. How come? Okay, well, it's a panel, so add child to panel widget. The context is going to be the widget, and just like that. So that is the complete refresh server list. That's the most tedious of everything in this entire setup. So, let's see, am I forgetting anything? Yes, well, obviously the event graph. So, let's start with on click back. That's pretty easy. So hit your plus sign for the back button, back to main menu. So all that does is we get our game instance, and this is the beauty of creating all those events in the game instance. All we have to do now is just cast, and then all we have to do is just call our main menu event. So our show main menu, and so that will, since we already set that up, that will go through the whole transition states. Are we playing? Are we not? Etc. If we are, you know, create the main menu. If we're not, etc., etc. So that does it all for us, and it makes it, otherwise we'd have to do that all in here. So it makes it much easier when you do that in your game instance. Not to mention your game instance holds that information for the entire game. We need an event construct. So when this widget is created, we want to refresh the servers automatically. So bring in that macro. I guess technically we don't need that output pin. And then we need our refresh button. On clicked, refresh server list. So that'll do the same thing, just manually. And then the debug destroy session, whatever you want to call it. By default, you'd want to set it to collapse so that you can't see it at all and you only have refresh and back. But when you're debugging, you can set it to visible, and then on clicked, you do this, cast your game instance, and then you destroy session caller. Like so. So compile and save, and I believe that is that. Let's just think about this for a second. Yeah, because it just fills that up. We don't need to actually bind anything, so it should work. So we can close that out once it's compiled and saved. Server row, compile, save. Back to our game instance. Let's continue filling that out. So I guess we might as well do the join from server list event. So So we just worked with it. So we take the search result and we join session. So we have host, join, and destroy. Over in here we need to show load screen. So we show the load screen and then we join the session. So that way there's a loading screen while you're switching maps. And you can apply that to single player games too, actually. Set up in a similar way. And the player controller, get player controller. And then on failure, we want to display error with something like failed to join server. So this is, whoops, let's comment it. When you click a server, this joins it. From the server list. So we can drag that down now that it's done. Put that right there, I guess. So show server list event, right? We never finished that. But now that we have that widget, it should be pretty quick. If it's not valid, we create a widget, same as all the other ones, of type server list. This one, it also needs an owning player. So get player controller. Nope, not get owning player. Get controller. There we go. And we want to also go way up here because we want to set mode UI only. So we take the return value. So now that we have our server list, make sure we set that so the variable type is widget server list. Perfect. Error we got, main menu got, server, loading we don't have yet though, right? Widget load, no, so that'll be our last one. So same as before, return value server list, so we set our server list to that. And off of there we add to viewport. If it is valid, we just add it. And then we set the input mode to UI only. And the target is the player controller, and the widget to focus is the server list. Nice and easy. So this is show the server list when clicked from the main menu. So we might as well do the show load screen then. So show load screen, we state transition to loading screen. This one will be very quick. Whoops, not here. The loading screen is very easy to make. It's nothing fancy. It's all with built-in stuff. So the new state is going to be an is valid. Just copy this. It's the exact same thing. So let's just copy this is valid, add to viewport, and set input mode and get player controller. We'll just copy that and paste it above just to make our lives a bit easier, since this is getting extremely long and I don't like splitting up my videos. So new state execution, and then we just need to put in our loading widget. So loading, but we need to create it. Is not valid, create widget, the return value, set the loading widget to that, then add it to the viewport. Oh, we can't do that yet. And widget to focus. Alright, so let's save this while we're at it. So let's create our last one here, user inter, or I think one of our last ones, widget loading screen. So this one is very, very, very easy. All we need to do is take our canvas panel, so that's like the entire screen. I'm going to add a border. I'm going to add a vertical box. We're going to add text into the vertical box, a spacer, and then your choice, either a throbber or a circular throbber, which don't sound like they should. So let's start with the border. So the border is anchored to the center. Alignment 0.5, 0.5. And we set the vertical alignment to vertically aligned center. And it'll be about 800 by 400. And position X and Y, 0 and 0. Easy. And we can set its color if we want to, something like 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, just like our error dialog. Then the vertical box, just one, nope, it already takes it, I forgot again. Our text, we just want it to be centered and to say loading. And lastly, your spacer, you can set whatever you think looks best. I'll go for about 128. And then your circular throbber, you can play with that a little bit if you want. You can center it. You can set it to fill if you, set it to fill if you want. Like, which one am I looking for? I can't remember. Number of pieces, you could add more to get a crazy look. The period, you can make it last longer, or you can make it really, really short. So you can get some funky things in the radius, of course. So depending what kind of look you want, and the image, you can change the tint if you want it to be like yellow or whatever. Draws, box, border, which one is it? I can't remember. And of course you could choose an image if you wanted. Whatever works. Anyway, so that's it. So compile and save. Yep. So we can close that and we can go back and we can just select loading screen. Owning player is the player controller, and then we set the loading widget and we add it to the viewport. We gotta put the target in there. Oh, is that gonna be a bugger? I guess we gotta go off here and then do add to viewport. Oh, I gotta do that all over. Oh, right, because okay, let's undo that. We forgot to change loading to widget loading screen reference. That should change all the variables. Now it should plug in. There we go. That's that. So that is comment. Show loading screen when traveling maps. Alright, what are we forgetting? That is it for the majority of multiplayer. Now we just need to do netcode errors. So type in event network error. This is a pre-made one. We want to branch off of it. The condition is if we're in a server. If not, then we display an error dialog. So display error. The error message, we're just gonna, instead of trying to figure it out from failure type, we're gonna just quickly create a function, a peer function. I hate when it does that. We're gonna call this network or netcode error toString. So in here, this function select it, check off the peer box, because it's going to be a peer function. You'll see what a peer function is if you don't know in a minute. We just need an input called in-ear, which is of the type network failure. And then we just need to output of type string called error out, and put one return node there, and then right click and type in add return node, since we can do that in 4.9 now. So all we need to do is take the in error switch statement, and so it has all the pre-made ones, and so all we need to do is take connection timeout to this one and do the error out as connection timed out, and since it's an error dialog, it should be error connection timed out, and the rest we'll say lost connection to host, because that's basically what all of these mean. You can get a little more specific if you want for debugging or whatever, but just error lost connection to host. So compile and save. We can head back, and now we can pull in that net error code to string node, plug in the colors, and that is done. Easy. So comment that this is catch net code errors, and then we want travel errors too. So event travel error, and it's just worth doing this so that you don't have stuff not working, you go what the heck. So we want to display an error dialog. We don't need the branch. Travel errors happen when you're traveling between maps, so we just need to recreate this the exact same netcode error to string. So I'm just going to duplicate that. I'm going to call this travel error to string. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to get rid of all this, and we're simply going to take error out, append, and we're going to go error traveling maps due to colon space, and then take this and just cast it, and that's it. So we can go back and we can do our travel error to string. Come on, failure type. Oh, I left that as a network failure. Travel error to string should be not, the input should not be network, it should be e network or e travel failure. There we go. Reconnect that into B, compile that, go back. Now it should plug in. There we go. Cool. So catch travel errors between maps. So that is let's see, that is pretty much our entire game instance. Just a couple tiny things to add now. So we need a begin play underscore show main menu. So this is just called from level blueprint. So all this does is it just checks the current state. Remember I said this is how you save a lot of work. So we, instead of checking the state, we just do this. So if we're in startup, yes, then we show main menu event. So this saves you doing hundreds of nodes. So just show the main menu when restarting or opening the game for first time. And hide widget is done. Oh, right. I did it again. I hate that. Start playing state. So that is just a state transition to playing. So that'll be when we start playing, we just change to playing. That's it. Compile, save. That is our game instance. So so now we need to let's quickly create a HUD. So let's just go user interface widget blueprint, and let's just call this MP widget underscore MP HUD. And I'm just gonna keep this very simple. I'm going to add a vertical box in here. I'm just gonna call this player list or scores or whatever you want, and I'm gonna offset it by 32 and 32. I'm gonna make it about 1024 by 800. Maybe it won't really matter. We'll have that 400. And what we will do is we want to get people's names and such. So let's go to the graph and event tick. So we want to check an is valid (1). We want to see, is our game state valid? So get game state. We haven't dealt with game states yet. We will have to though. So is our game state valid? If it is, then we do a for loop, not a for each, for loop. So for each game state, we need to create a game state. So under blueprint, right click, blueprint class, search for state, create a game state, and call it MP, or call it GSMP. We also want another one, state, do a player state, and this will be a GSPS. Oh, that didn't, oh, there we go. So in game state multiplayer, basically it just handles the state of the game, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it. So there shouldn't actually be anything we need in there. However, player state we will. So open up our player state, and we'll add a variable called player number. You could also you would store things like scores in here, or kill death ratio or something, and you want it to be public. And you want it to be replicated, otherwise it won't be seen by other people on the server. That's where things get important. Alright, so back in our widget HUD, we are going to drag off of game state and get player array. We want to get the length of it. So how many players are in the game as our first index. Our last index is going to be, oh, we forgot. Take your player list and make it a variable. Then drag it in as a getter. And then we want to get children count. So how many players do we have, basically, is what that's saying as the last index. Except we need to subtract one because, where are you? Integer minus one. Because you're counting from 0. Or sorry, because of yourself. You don't want to count yourself. And so just take the index, remove child, oh come on. Loop body, remove child at, turn off context sensitive. It's the only one there is. I hate when that happens. Index. The target is the scoreboard. Our little player list there. It won't be a scoreboard since we don't have any scores. Just keeping it to a player list. So What this does is removes players who have left. Once that loop is completed, we can go down here and we can do a for each loop. And this one takes in the same thing, the player array. So I'm just going to drag it down here for speed. And so what we want to do is we want to create a row for new players. So we need to create a function called create row for new player. And this simply just takes in a integer, just an integer called player array index. So if that is equal, double equal sign, equal integer to player list get children count. So if the player array index, so if the player is equal to the number of children in there, that is our condition in a branch. If that's true, then we need to create a widget, which will be another easy widget, create widget. And its owning player is going to be, we need to figure out who owns it, get owning player. And then drag in your scoreboard, your list, and we need to add child. Just like that. So we just need to quickly go back to our widgets and create user interface, widget, player list row. And so again, this one's very, very, very easy. All we do in this one is add a horizontal box and two text boxes into the horizontal box. First one is going to be player, and set it to align left and vertically align center. And the second one is going to be our score, although we're not keeping a score. So I'm just going to set that to 0. I'll make that an addition in a later version. And that one you want to align to the right. And this horizontal box, we want to, its anchor is fine, its size is fine, or its position is fine, but we want to make it about 512 by 32. So that it stretches that out a little bit. Or it should, left. Oh, I see, right. This needs to be set to fill. There we go. And then player, let's just bind, create binding. And so that way we'll be able to get the player's name, but not only that, their Steam name. So we need to create a variable. And remember, since these are replicated, they need to be public. So name of type string, editable, so that it's public. And again, this is where you could hold like a score, and so that just goes into there. Whoops, drag in as a getter and cast it, and that is it. Compile and save that. So we'll just show our players' names in our HUD. So we just select that as our class there in our HUD, the player list row. Perfect. So we can now go back to our event graph and we can call that create row. So for each player we create one. The array index is shouldn't say new parameter. If we refresh nodes, oh well, it should say player array index. I thought I typed that in, but it must have got deleted. Off of player array index, we also want to drag in our player list again and get child at index, like so. And we also want to, oops, I guess I don't need that. We want to do a plus integer plus 1. So all we do here is get child at return value cast to widget player list row that connects to our create row, and as that we set name. And so here's the cool part now. What we can do is go drag off of name and get player name. Under player state. No, sorry. I'm thinking the wrong. We need to do a function get player name, which uses oh, what the heck? Oh, I can't remember what I'm thinking of. Anyways, so get player name just takes again an integer player number, 1 through 8 or whatever, and in there we need to do one last thing, get player state by number. So we'll create that one. So that one also takes in an integer called player number, as the name suggests. And so we need to first check if our game state is valid. So is valid, oops, wrong one, is valid question mark, not context sensitive on, and the input object is get game state. And so we check if it's valid or not. If it is valid, we do a for each loop of array off the game state get player. Let's see. Get, okay, where are you? Get game state. Let's try compiling. Drag off of there. Player array. There we go. That plugs into the array. And so in there, we take the array element and we cast to player state. And as there, we set player number. Now notice it has the 2 dots. That means it's replicated. So that's important. You can see it also says replicated. So that means it will be shown to everybody, basically. I mean, there's a lot more to replication, but I didn't want to set. I wanted to get player number. And then we want to check if it's double equal sign to all the way back to player number. Just a little fidelity check, and then that goes into a branch condition. And then what we do is we create a local variable called result ps, so for player state, of type ps underscore the player state we created. Game state, oh, did I call it game state player state? Whoops. I'm sure that I just typo, my bad. Anyways, so if true, then we set that local variable to the cast, to the player state. And once it's completed, then we add return node. I forgot to add that in here we return the player state. So we return, I guess I called it GSPS, but your player state. So we output player state, not an array, however. There we go. And so we take the result, the local variable there, and also if it's not valid, we just directly return, like so. Okay dokie. So we can compile and save that and go back to get player name, which calls that. So get player state by number. We're almost there. Player number goes into player number. Target is self. Player state, we check, is it valid? We also go off of player state and get player name. And see, that's replicated too. And we need in here resulting name, which is of type string. Yeah, so we set that, hold down Alt and drag it in. If it is valid, we set it to whatever the player's name is. If it's not valid, we set it to something basic, just like player. And then either way, actually, you know what, I'm thinking in 4.8. We can do this in 4.9. If it is valid, we add return node. And I forgot that we're returning a string called player's name. So if it is valid, we return that. If it's not valid, we add return node of just something simple like player. Alright, so that one's done. So we can close out of there. So we create the new row. So we can go back there now. So okay, where am I? Create new row for player. That was finished, yep. Right, we were working in the event graph. Okay, so we set the name to +1, then we get player name. Oh shoot, that's got to be get player name is peer. So check off the peer check mark, compile, go back to our event graph, get player name, there we go, plug that right into the name. And we're not doing score, so I'm not worrying about that. So update current player's name, score, kill death ratio, anything you want other people to see. Alright, so that is that. Yep, so we can compile and save. Okay, what is it giving me an error here for? Create row for new player. Could not find a pin. Okay, what am I forgetting? Let me try dragging that in there again. Remember the player number didn't show up? Oh, let's get player state. Get create row for a new player. Player array index didn't show up last time. Let's try that. Yeah, Unreal's just funny like that. Alright, so that's our HUD. So let's go to our maps now. So we have our main menu map. Let's open that. So in our main menu map, we can open up our level blueprint, I guess. Blueprints, open level blueprint. So very easy. You just go event begin play, P left click, and we do a get game instance, cast, and remember what I told you again, saving time, begin. Remember that one we created, begin play show, just like that. So game starts here. Compile, close. So that is our main menu. So after we leave the main menu and go into our other level, what did we call it now? So I need to go back into the game instance. I forgot what I called it. It was MP level 1. Remember with the listen. So we need a map. Create a new map called MP level 1. So we'll open that, save everything, and we need something to see in here, and we also need to create a game mode. However, we do need to start again in the level blueprints. So in here, event begin play, we need to get game instance, cast, start playing state, because now we're actually playing something. So now that we're playing, we can forget about the UI and we can now set the focus to the game viewport. So no more remember to set focus to UI, and then once it's got focus in the viewport, then we set focus, or then we set input mode. Come on, set input mode game only, and we need to choose the get player controller, so whichever player it is. So we can compile that. Just gonna save everything, and we just need something to look at, and we need a couple player start locations. So we need, let's just add a sky sphere, BP sky sphere, skylight, directional light, and then let's just use, do we have any first person blueprint geometry meshes? Yeah, there we go, template floor. Let's player start, let's put in 1 and 2. Now under details, you'll see player start tag. Let's go player 1, and the other one, I kind of reversed those, player 2. So that's how you do what do you call it? Sorry, network starts like that with multiple players. Now we need a game mode. So under blueprints, let's right click blueprint class, game mode, and this will be MP GM game mode. Save that and select it. And so since we don't have any characters, let's just use the default pawn, those guys that fly around. Now since they don't replicate, what about the spectator spawn? Yeah, you can't see the spectator pawn, but you can see the default pawn. So the default pawn, I like to use that as the default pawn class when I'm just testing this out, because you can at least see it. And if you're hosting the game, you won't see other people move, but they will see you move. And then you can change that by just creating a pawn that replicates. The HUD is going to be our... I guess we don't have a HUD technically, do we? Player controller, we need to create one really quickly. So right click, blueprint class, player controller. We'll call this PCMP. Select that. Game state is going to be GSMP, player state is going to be GSPS, and spectator pawn. So save that. And open up your player controller. This will be one of the last blueprints we need to make, I think. This should be pretty quick. So we need a, this is where replication comes in. Client post, custom event, client post login. And so replication replicates on owning client. You can read the tooltips to get a better idea of what they are. And so after we call this event, we need to set up the in-game UI. So let's create a function called setup game. Let's call it game HUD. So all we do is we do a branch. We check if it's is local player controller. So is it us? If it is, then we create a widget of type that, remember the little HUD we made up. Owning player is self, actually, because it's player controller, so just self. Get a reference to self. Then take the return value. We're just going to right click and promote it to HUD. I'm going to go widget underscore HUD. Close enough. And then we'll take that and drag off of it and add to viewport. And then we also compile and save. And then go back. So when we do the client post login replicated event, then we set up the in-game HUD. Then we get game mode. We cast to it. And then we need to go into our game mode to set up a respawn. Well, we don't need to do a respawn technically, but this is where you do a respawn. Just Google how to do a blueprint respawn. It's really quite easy. I just don't want to go over the logic. So next we need a custom event called, actually no, we don't need that because I'm not going over that today. We want event end play. And all we do there is we bring in our HUD and remove from parent. Doesn't matter why end play was the end play reason, but remove HUD after leaving, i.e. back to main, back to menu, because we'll add on a menu to go back to the main menu. And then this one is just after login, set up the UI and spawn the player. You know what? We will have to do that. So let's very quickly open up our game mode. Go to the event graph. We need to create a custom event called respawn player event. And this is going to execute on server. So run on server. And we want it to be reliable. And we need to take an input of type, of type player controller, which will be of the type player controller with a reference. So we drag off here and we get controlled pawn. So which pawn is being controlled, and we destroy it. Destroy actor. Since we're respawning. Then we go into a branch with its condition being double equal integer. And we want to get game state we want to get the player array just like before. So player array. Then we want to get the first player, so that'll be the host. So get array node 0. And off of that, we want to get player ID, and this is all stock stuff. As you can see, if I type in get, there's all sorts of stuff in there. Lifespan, is a bot, spectator, ping, player name, score, etc. There's a few things you can get in there. Oh, so that should be the upper one. If is the player ID equal to our player controller, we drag off that, and then we get player state. Again, default stuff. Remember, it's replicated, and player ID should be replicated too. Get its player ID. So we just check if they're comparable. If they are, then we spawn actor from class. If they're not, we spawn actor from class. And we need 2 variables. We need player1 of variable type player start, and then we need to make another one, player2. So we go and those need to be arrays. So just check off the little boxes there. So drag in player1 and player2 as getters, and get array 0. So do an array get, and then we want to get the transform. So get actor transform. So that's basically where is the player start at. Now in 4.9 they introduced this new way of spawning actors where collision setup. We want it so that try to adjust location but always spawn, so they'll always respawn, but if they're on top of each other, then just move the player that's spawning over a little bit. And then we need to bring our player controller input in. So I'm going to take it and drag it all the way over, reroute, and we need to type possess, except I'm going the wrong way. Possess, there we go, possess. So that is our target. The in pawn is the return value. Oh yeah, we need to select a class, so we're just using default pawn, although we could use first person since we did that template. But just for ease, I'm just going to choose default pawn, but you could use first person character if that's a template you use like I did. Maybe we'll get into that in another little bonus video. So respawn player 1, 2 at their respective locations. And we need to go through one more quick little execution chain, which is something unique to game mode, which is event on post login. So that's network stuff. So new player, get player state. Off of here we do a switch has authority. That's a network thing. If we have authority, then we get all actors of class, and this is just so we can fill player 1 and 2. We get player start. We take out the actors and do a for each loop. And off of the array element, remember we tagged those, we get player start tag. If it's double equal to name player 1, and if you're setting up like a 64 player server. There's better ways to do this, but this is the quick and easy way. So we go into a branch. If true, then we add a new array element to the player start array element. So we add new, or sorry, add unique. So if true, right there, of type the player1 array. If false, so this would be player2 obviously, so it's the only other tag, add unique of, sorry, from the same place, the array element of type player2. And once that's completed, then we want to cast to our player state we created. So we cast to, what did I call it? GMPS? PS, MPPS? Cast to player, cast to, what the heck did I call it? Our player state. GSPS, cast to GSPS, there we go. And the object that we are casting into that is the new player, so the new player that logs in basically. And off of there, then we set player number. Remember we created that variable, and see that it's replicated, and this verifies the scoreboard will be in the same order for all players. And the player number is going to be get game staked, and then we want to get our player array again, and off of that we want to get its length again, how many. Plug it in, and after that we simply want to cast to our new player controller, which is PCMP, and the object that we are casting into there, oh sorry, I screwed that up. The player state, we're casting the player state into the new player. See, it's a player controller reference. So the new player is what we cast into the new player controller. And then very, very quickly, as here, we just do client post login, the replicated function we created. Done, done, done. So this is just our post login execution chain. So post login. All right, so that is set, and set. All right, so we can compile and save. Back to the player controller. Everything is good. Yep, everything we need for today anyway. Game instance should be good. Let me just think about that for a second. Yep, that should be it. So let's give this a try. So you need to play it in standalone game mode, remember? So we're gonna play it in standalone mode. And you won't be able to see much, but I'll just show you. I'll open my Steam window here quick. So as you can see, I automatically joined for some reason. So obviously I have because I'm playing the level, but you can see I have my Steam name, my score, which is nothing. You can see on the default pawn I can't move, so I must have screwed that up. And I have no mouse, so I need to do something like that. Why couldn't I move? Default pawn. They're supposed to be able to move. Maybe they were overlapping or something. I don't know. Anyways, let's go back to our maps and load our main menu so we can do this the right way. So if I bring up my Steam window, you will see that I am, oh, where the heck are you? I'm playing Space War. So for server list, it's got the first person HUD there too. So there's the server list that I just created, apparently. I don't know how that was still on there. So that shows you at least how the players or the server list works. And then we'll quickly just host the game. So that's really, it takes a long time to do all the nodes, but that shows you really how simple Blueprint multiplayer can be. So we have Steam enabled, LAN mode enabled, server list. Mine's still up there. It's got one player in it apparently still with a ping of 9,000. We can debug destroy that, but we can go back, play game, we get our loading screen, and it creates a session. Apparently though, because of my game mode, I am creating first person demo mode. I don't know why that's happening, but either way, that is that. So I'm in game, so test it out with a friend of yours, and you can see deleted actors. That's the 2 players there. Try it out with a friend of yours, and you guys should be able to play together technically. So that is it for now. So thanks for watching from the team here at UnrealTek.net, a division of BlenderTek.com. If you enjoyed this video or learned something, then please subscribe and consider liking it so that we can continue to improve our videos based on your user input. We're available on social media, links on your screen, and we will see you guys next time.